I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Honestly, I was definitely gonna let my pride get in the way of me not taking him up on his offer despite my current situation at that time. What's good, beautiful people? If you're new here, my name is Sha, and I just want to share with you guys just my journey and the trials that it was faced with. If this is your first time tuning in, please go watch my last two videos where you get to learn a little bit about me and just the whole testimony that began my transformation. That will be found in the description box below. But if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for tuning in and watching my third video. You are awesome. Now, let's get right into this journey. So this move to Orlando was definitely the start of my walk with Christ. And it's funny because I tell people all the time that if it was up to me, I would have never moved to Orlando. And why? Because honestly, Miami is where I'm from. Like, this is where I am 100% comfortable, where I know everybody from my closest friends and family. So why would anybody want to move from where they're comfortable in to be and place themselves in a state or environment of being uncomfortable? Not most people. And with hand raised, I was most people. So this thought really came up out of nowhere one day, and honestly, I was confused by it because there was nothing for me in Orlando. I started to think, and I'm like, okay, this is probably just coming from because I know a close friend that just moved up there a couple months ago. So I'm like, yup, that's what it gotta be. Like, maybe because this friend that I knew moved up to Orlando, now all of a sudden I want to move up there too. Like, please, not happening. So, I dismissed the whole idea altogether, and I went about my business. It's not until a couple weeks later after that I had that same feeling again, but this time it was a more stronger push. So now I'm thinking like, okay, this is serious. Whenever like my friends or family asked me why I wanted to move, I was just like, honestly, I don't know. I just know like it's time for me to leave Miami and go to Orlando. It's just time for me to leave. And that same close friend that I mentioned that lives in Orlando, I ended up hitting him up. He's somebody that I consider like a brother. So I hit him up because I remember the first time he told me that he was moving to Orlando. Like, he told me whenever I needed a place to stay, or if I was ever in Orlando, to let him know, and he got me. So I'm calling him to basically tell him about like this revelation that I just had and this plan that I have and everything, so I can know if that offer is still on the table. And of course he was down to let me come and stay at his place. So after I got the green light to come, I got everything that I needed. And towards the ending of the month is where I packed everything and drove up to Orlando. So this is when things started to like go downhill. Not even 2 weeks in, it's a situation that already came up that towards the ending of it, the best decision that he felt that he had to make at that time was to let me go. And I'm not gonna get into the details about it because honestly, it's not my place to put anybody's business out there like that. So if you know, then you already know. But basically I was left with like, okay, so what am I gonna do? Because I know I can't go back to Miami, because me going back to Miami was me placing myself back into the same cycle that I so desperately wanted out of, and it just didn't make sense for me to do that. So towards the ending of the time when it was time for me to go, I just sucked it up, put my big girl's panties on, and I just made sure to try to secure me a job before I had to leave the house. And things didn't have to be 10 times harder than it already looked like it was gonna be for me. So eventually, well, not even eventually, immediately after that, God basically helped me land like this job that wasn't my usual taste or something that I usually go after. Especially because in the beginning with that job, man, I struggled so much, because it was just really hard for me to make money out of it. But I had a job, and I was just glad, so then I can be able to like use as much money that I was getting out of it to be able to at least save up to stay in these motels, so I didn't have to resort to living in my car. And before I continue, I know a lot of people is probably sitting there thinking like, yeah, girl, you tripping. That couldn't have been me. I would have eventually either moved back to my mama or whoever house, or done something else. And it's like, yeah, I could have done that plus more, because trust me, I thought of a lot of things that I could have done. But the thing is, once you say yes to walking with Christ, then depending on how committed you really are in your relationship with him determines on how long you stay on the boat with him despite the storms that you're going through. And I know sometime after that, God was able to send destiny helpers or people that God used to be able to help me out a little bit. But, eventually even that, only lasted for so long. And I, still ended up being back in the same spot that I was in. So right before things started to get really bad for me, I just remembered that the same door that God allowed to be closed when I first arrived in Orlando is the same door that God allowed to be open, but on his time. And what I mean by that is, so basically, the same close friend, like when that same close friend, he ended up hitting me back up, I guess when things cleared up for him to, let me know that he wanted to roommate again. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Honestly, I was definitely going to let my pride get in the way of me not taking him up on his offer despite my current situation at that time. I did not care. And yes, I knew and understood why he had to make the decision that he made, especially at that time for him when he made that decision. But it's the fact that I just couldn't help ignore the fact that I still felt strongly about how that decision, ended up affecting me. And, once I calmed down and I just finally was able to think more clearly and not emotionally, that's when the Holy Spirit softened my heart. And from there, I was showed the bigger picture and how this was definitely a blessing in disguise needed for what's to come. Now, in my next video is then where I'll be taking you guys through the ups and downs of this job that God led me to. And just you'll hear about the lessons that was learned in this job, and just one of the biggest discoveries that has carried me on to this day. Thank you all for tuning in and watching this video. Please try to share this with somebody who may be able to relate or benefit from my videos. And you guys all have a blessed day.